What is going on YouTube? It is your boy Chad bringing y'all another video, man. And it's been a little minute since I made a YouTube video here, but we back. And today we're gonna be talking about Elon Musk buying 9.2. Well, Elon Musk is now the biggest single shareholder of Twitter stock. He now owns about 9.2% stake in the company, and this comes after Elon Musk. If you didn't know, he is a freedom of speech absolutionist. That's what he said on Twitter one day. And he's basically just been trying to fight free speech because Twitter has done a lot of censoring. They've taken people down. They say things are misinformation, but later comes out it was true. It always has been true. And so now he's, what should we do about Twitter? So as of Monday, April 4th, Musk owns 73,486,938 shares of Twitter now. That's a ton of shares, and which represents 9.2% passive stake in the company. So he owns more than like Jack Dorsey, who the CEO of Twitter. He owns more than a lot of people, and it was worth $2.89 billion. And even after I was checking the stock market just to see what Twitter was before he bought it, and it was at like $39. Now it's shot up to like 50. So he's already made his return on investment. But I have this article here from CNBC. We'll just read a little bit of it, just so we can go through with what's going on. There's a tweet here from Elon Musk that says, "Free speech is essential to a functioning democracy. Do you believe Twitter rigorously adheres to this principle?" And this is when Elon Musk put up a poll saying, do you think Twitter offers free speech? Yes or no? 2 million people voted, and 70% of the people said no. And Elon Musk even says that given that Twitter serves as a de facto public town square, failing to adhere to free speech principles fundamentally undermines democracy. What should be done? So when he says that it's basically like a public town square, what he's saying is people come to Twitter. So me, I have my own opinions, my own thoughts, my own process. So-and-so comes to Twitter with their own thoughts, their own opinions and process. And Twitter is the forum or the public square in which we talk about our public opinions. Twitter's job is just to be a place where my opinions can sit on a platform so other people can see it. Twitter doesn't need to be the public square where if I come saying apples are good and someone else says oranges are good, Twitter doesn't need to be the one to be like, well, I agree with the oranges, so all people who like apples and say apples are good, you're banned. That's not how it should work. It should be a public forum where anyone can get on there, share their opinions and ideas, and it sit there. The whole point of Twitter is when I put out my opinion and someone else has a differing opinion, we talk about it or discuss. If the other person doesn't want to have a talk about it, then you don't have to interact with my Twitter, but it doesn't need to be silenced or censored. So we'll go ahead and start reading here. Outspoken Tesla CEO Elon Musk purchased a giant stake in Twitter that makes him the largest outside shareholder in the social media stock, not long after criticizing the company for what he said was its failure to uphold the tenets of free speech. Musk owns the 73,486,938 shares of Twitter, which represents a 9.2% passive stake in the company. The stake is worth $2.89 billion. The purchase comes less than 2 weeks after Musk criticized the company, polling people on Twitter about whether it adheres to free speech principles, given that Twitter serves as the de facto public town square, yada yada, what should be done. Elon Musk also last month considered building a new social media platform. Now, as far as new social media platforms go, Trump has like Truth Social. You got stuff like Gab and, like places like Rumble for YouTube and stuff like that. And my whole thing is it's kind of hard for these alternative forms of free speech to make it because it's really only one side that's being silenced, like conservatives or Republicans, whereas Democrats and liberals, their ideas are just, that's what everybody is. So when conservatives or Republicans, say, we need to find a new platform, it's kind of like echo chamber of the same opinions that you already agree with. So you don't really get that other side. So those social medias and stuff never really take off. Um, and yeah, it's just hard to really start a new social media. While it is classified as a passive stake, investors were bidding shares higher on the chance this could lead to something more. Twitter stock surged more than 27%. Musk could try to take a more aggressive stance here on Twitter. Wedbush analyst says this eventually could lead to some sort of buyout. This makes sense given that Musk has at least been talking about, at least for a social media perspective. Twitter declined to comment. Musk is a frequent user. Twitter has more than 80 million followers on the platform. However, some of his tweets have gotten the Tesla chief into hot water over the years. Now, my whole thing about, Elon Musk trying to start a new social media, like I just said, I went through that part. But when it comes to him buying, this much stake in Twitter, we won't see change overnight from this type of event, but it is a bold move by Elon. For some reason, it seems like Elon is just a man who has his opinions, says what he's going to do, and he does it. He says he doesn't agree with, Twitter silencing and not being, free speech principles or, what's fundamental to democracy. And so he like, well, they going to do that and they not trying to change it, so I'm going to buy this much percent of it so I can have a say-so. Now, like I said, the say-so is not going to come overnight. He can't just wake up and all of a sudden Twitter's a free speech platform all over again. But depending on, certain rulings or certain policies that need to be changed, he may could have a say-so in those because he owns in the big enough, share of the company that he could actually get something done. I also think that when it comes to these, kind of woke companies and stuff like that, a lot of the time, it may not be the company that's doing it, but the people who work for the company. Similar to how, when we saw Netflix with Dave Chappelle, the Netflix employees were the ones trying to silence Dave Chappelle. But Netflix, the CEO and stuff, were like, nah, like, we're trying to keep Dave Chappelle up. But the actual employees were the one doing it. Same goes for YouTube, same goes for Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. It's really the employees within the company. You would have to, if we're going to just like honestly speak, you would have to go to these companies, look from the bottom up, and fire those people who have these biases or these preconceived notions or who are already taking this stuff, too far past company policy. They're bringing their own politics, their own stance into the position of what they're using to silence or censor people, if we're going to be honest. So this is a good first step, Elon, putting his money where his mouth is, to be honest, and being like, if Twitter doesn't have, free speech and 70% of the 2 million people that voted, now that is a good sample size. 2 million people voted and 70% of them said no, it's not a free speech place. And it's supposed to be like a de facto public town square. That's a pretty good amount of people who say no, there's no real freedom of speech. And Elon, I wouldn't even say Elon's conservative or he's a Republican. Elon is just somebody to me who uses his common sense and sees what's going on and calls it out and is bold enough to stand on it. He doesn't care if he's canceled or anything. He's Elon Musk. Like, he's doing what everyone should be doing, I'm not saying you need to buy this percent of a company to make a difference, but for people to stand on what they believe and actually like try to stand up for people, even if they don't agree with the people they're standing up for. You know what I mean? Like, Elon may not agree with everything I say, but he does agree that freedom of speech is a thing and people need to come with their ideas to this public town square. And the people within the town square are the ones who either you agree or you don't. It doesn't make sense for you to be banned or be censored or be silenced off the public square, especially if the public square they say is non-biased and they have no position, but yet they're actively going against their own opposition as though the public square is its own person, when it's not. The public square is like a message board. You put your message up on the board. The board doesn't have a only this type of person can do that. But I mean, people are going to say it's a private company, it's da-da-da-da. But when it comes to Twitter, they've been having a lot of public policy that is actually being passed from, their actions they take. The government's listening to Twitter and what people are saying. And, it's starting to get into the like social media overreach and that sort of thing. Um, but yeah, man, I just thought it was interesting that Elon Musk put his money where his mouth is, had a little percent, a big chunk of Twitter stock, and he could actually make a difference, on policy, on finding out what's causing all this wokeness really to happen and freedom of speech to be silenced. But if he decides to, create his own social media platform, hey, go Elon. Even though I do think it would be harder for him to do so, in my personal opinion, I say if you really want to make a change to Twitter, let Twitter die. I don't have Twitter personally because it's just a cesspool of nonsense. And if you just let it die, there will have to be a new social media that comes out of that would fix, in my opinion, the issues that Twitter has. But anyways, man, leave a comment down below on what you guys' thoughts are. And as always, thank you guys for watching. It's been your boy Chad, and I'm out. Peace.